All right, I am here with Mike Reed, joining from Vancouver, Canada, and we are going to be talking about sound healing, everything that Mike has been doing with his business. Thank you, Mike, for being here and joining the space and
My
sharing
pleasure.
your insights. Looking forward to this. And first of all, so we've had a little bit of a pre-chat. We're going to go off into different streams of discussion, but I would love to hear. So just to put it into context for everyone, so how long have you been doing this for? Sound healing and working on big events and private events also.
It all started, I would say, the big year where things made like the leap from, you know, private like one-on-one sessions to like going out into the world and doing these like large public events with lots of people was 2018. So it's been 5 straight years of, consistently doing a circuit of sound bath events all over the region where I live, and then also in the summers, I usually go out on like a tour outside of the Greater Vancouver, Whistler, Vancouver Island area.
Do you go international? Have you
Yeah, I've done
ventured out?
I've done Mexico and the U.S. as well.
Nice. And so I'd love to hear this transition because you have a background in music, and also we're going to be branching off into talking about the spiritual practice and our healing journey. And I'd love to hear what brought you into the work that you're doing, and what was that turning point that you had gone through from your music, the interest in your music background, into doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, okay. So let's rewind all the way back to when I was a little kid, like very small. Um, Music's kind of been in my family. It's something that almost everyone in my family does on some level. And so I was put into music like really young, like 6 years old. I was playing piano. And then I kind of got bored with that. It wasn't like cool. I started listening to like, you know, alternative rock music and punk rock music in my early years of like starting at like 11, 12 years old, and then I started to want to learn things like the electric guitar. And so I started playing guitar, and I was in a band when I was 12 years old, and we like played in front of our whole school. And then I moved to California, and I started playing drums, and then I switched from guitar to drums, and I was in a few bands around the neighborhood, in a town called El Segundo, where I lived for basically all of high school. And then I went to university because that's what they told me I should do. You know what I mean? They said, oh, you need to get a degree. So I went, and for whatever reason, I got a degree at the University of Victoria because we moved back up here. And I got this degree in social sciences, minor in business. But it wasn't really like I felt like I was going in this direction that I didn't really want to go in. You know what I mean? I saw like my friends starting to wear like suits to work and stuff like that, and that's just not a world I want to be part of, like ever. So, um, yeah, I'm not a suit and tie kind of person. I learned that pretty quick. Uh, but throughout university, I was always in bands as well. Like I was always like music has just been this constant thing. And so after I graduated from university, I kind of was like, well, I don't want to go down that like, corporate career path that I was feeling myself getting into. Um, and so I just totally switched gears and then went down to LA and went to music school at Musicians Institute and really like honed my skills there for a solid year and really went down the rabbit hole of like specifically drums. I was like I specialized in drums, drumming performance down there, and then I came back to Vancouver, started gigging with a bunch of bands over several years, and that was fun and all. But there was some like unhealthy aspects to that scene, being in like the music scene came with like a lot of alcohol use and other things, and yeah, I guess what happened was through like a series of kind of falling on my face in many respects. I started to seek out like wellness and healing and spirituality because I felt like that was really lacking in my life at that time, like in my 20s, you know? And yeah, just through a series of blunders and messed up a bunch of times in like relationships and career and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I just kind of felt like I was on my knees a little bit in my life, like in my late 20s. And so I went down this path of seeking health and wellness, anywhere I could. I started with like yoga, and then I was into float tanks, sensory deprivation tanks. And I joined this shamanic apprenticeship, which was amazing, with Angela Prider. And she guided me on this multi-year journey of like finding my um, quintessential essence, let's say. Because I don't know about um, anyone else, but I felt like I kind of lost myself in there in my 20s. I forgot who I was or something. And through this shamanic apprenticeship, I was guided kind of back home to myself. So that was an amazing process. Um, but yeah, I was doing everything like men's work as well, psychedelic therapies. Um, I was working with. I went down to Peru and I met this master shaman that was the teacher of my teacher, and we did a process down there. And man, it was just this wild journey over many years, over several years, that got me to discover sound healing ultimately, right? So because I was on the path of like seeking wellness, seeking like to improve myself, seeking um, to heal a lot of things. I found sound healing because I was going to this yoga studio and I saw there was this sound bath event happening, and I went to it because I was like, that looks interesting, right? What do? You just lie down and receive this sounds. I didn't even know what a sound bath was, but I decided to sign up and I went and I lied down and received this experience, and I'll never forget, what happened to me in there. It was like the deepest meditation I've ever experienced because the sound and vibrational healing it creates this involuntary state of meditation. So I had never experienced that deep level of meditation where like the prefrontal cortex is turned off and my brain waves were reduced down to the delta and theta brainwave zone. I didn't know what was happening to me at the time. Now that I'm a sound healer, I understand what was happening to me now. But I was having all these visions and emotional releases, and my body was like having these involuntary movements, and it was like a parasympathetic nervous system release was happening. And I just sat in my car after this experience for probably like half an hour, just sitting there, like vibrating, like trying to understand what just happened to me. And from that point, that was the point where I was like, I have to know more about this. Like, what just happened to me? And um, because it's somewhat musical, there was like musical elements to that experience. I was like, I understood it on some level because of the musical background. So it fascinated me that sound and music and vibration like that can have these profound healing effects. And I always thought of music like it's for entertainment only. I mean, it can give you like emotional uplift, of course, when you hear like a beautiful piece of music, but in sound healing, it's much deeper than that. So that's how I discovered sound healing, and then I got obsessed with it, and I went down this rabbit hole, just seeking information, reading books. I went to this conference in San Francisco, and I met all these other people that are sound healers in this world, and I started buying my own instruments, and I started doing one-on-one sessions with people for free, just to get experience and get to figure out like what works and what doesn't in a sound healing sound bath session. So over many months of doing these free one-on-one sessions for people, just acquaintances, friends, family, anyone that I could find, like, hey, do you want to come over and we're going to do this thing to you, and all I need is your feedback. And people were like, sure, let's go. And then so I had this like pile of feedback forms. Like I'd get them to fill out these like questionnaires, and then I compiled like data over a long period of time, and I figured out like consistently, like over a broad spectrum of different people, like what do people like and what do people not like. So it was a very much like a self-training process, along with some like supplemental training online and reading books and like talking to other people that have been doing it for a long time, right? And then when I felt ready, I had like this sort of template, let's say, of a soundscape that I figured out is like highly effective. And then I went out and I started doing a public sound bath event at a friend's venue that I knew in Vancouver, and started like figuring out how to like sell tickets online and marketing events and that sort of thing. And then slowly over time, it just grew. And I realized that if I was going to do an event in the same spot, like too close together, like in terms of like scheduled like consecutively in the same week, say I did like 3 events per week, right? I noticed that attendance would like dissipate. Whereas if I did my events just once a month and created like some scarcity in that community, then the rooms would fill up and everybody would be there like all at the same time, because there'd kind of be like one opportunity per month in that area for this experience to for them to experience this, right? And then I said, okay, but I want to start like making a living doing this, so I can just like do once a month over here in this area. And then I found another friend of mine that owned a yoga studio across the other side of town, and I started doing it once a month there. And then over time, what's happened is I've created this circuit of events all over the whole region where I just do one event per month in each area, and I space them out enough, you know what I mean? And so that kind of model is how I've created SoundQuest, and it's been a fantastic journey. You know, I've met so many people over the last 5 years, and a lot of opportunities and doors have opened, and it's been this incredible adventure. You know, I've helped thousands of people now. I've done like hundreds and hundreds of these events, and it's been a life transformative journey for me. And now I'm teaching other people how to do the same thing and how to make an abundant living while helping a lot of people through sound healing through my new academy, SoundQuest Academy.
Brilliant. I'm curious to know, when you started compiling information from people, when you were testing your skills out, what was the consensus? What did you find people commenting the most on as far as positive feedback,
Mm.
or even changes to make during that process?
Yeah, I think it was all about like how I was guiding people in to the experience. I got a lot of positive feedback about particular instruments. People really liked the gong pretty consistently over like a broad spectrum of different people. So I kept working with the gong. People love this ocean drum that I use. And people still to this day come up to me after an event and comment. It's usually about the ocean drum. They
Hmm.
just love that one.
What is that? What is an ocean drum?
It's like this drum, this closed uh, skin drum that has these beads or these like little tiny balls inside of them, and then you just basically tilt the ocean drum like gently side to side. It sounds like the waves of the ocean. It sounds exactly like what you would hear if you were like lying right next to the beach or on a beach next to the ocean. So people really love that. It soothes them. It does actually emanate the full spectrum of sound. So it induces this sort of like meditative state. And I find that's a great one to start with in a session before I transition into other instruments. I usually start with the ocean drum.
And what are some of the other instruments that you typically use?
I typically I spend the most time on the gongs because I find that they're the most impactful. They have like the most powerful effects on people uh, in terms of what people are looking for when they sign up for sound bath. I think the gongs, if you get the right gongs, made by the right material and the right size, and you mix and match them together. If you're using uh, multiple gongs, if you mix, you have to mix and match them together a particular way, which I teach in my program. But the gongs, I use crystal singing bowls, Tibetan singing bowls, harmonium now. I really like the harmonium because it has the full musical scale. It's like a piano. It's an Indian uh, instrument, and it's sort of like this. It's a wind instrument though, so you're squeezing this accordion box, and you're playing the musical scale on piano keys, so you can really make some beautiful sounds. And then I also use my voice on top of that with some vocal overtoning. Um, Native flute I use, chimes, koshi chimes, and sometimes I'll bring in my steel tongue drum. And lately I've been working with my guitar. I've recently started bringing in some more musicality into the sound bath at the end by playing guitar and like playing a little song at the end for people because I find that's a good way to like um, bring people back, like where they've gone deep into deep meditation, relaxation, altered state of consciousness, and then to slowly bring them back. I start playing some music with the guitar, and I used to play just music on a speaker, someone else's song, but I find like if I can make my own music live, it's even more. I think it's. I just think it's better. It's
Mm-hmm.
live.
Mm-hmm.
People can feel the vibrations in the room from my guitar, from my voice. So,
And what happens just for people who may have not who have not been to a sound bath before? What is happening during this time? What is the resonance that is happening within a person when they hear this music? What's going on with their body, within themselves? And I know everyone has a different
mhm,
experience when they enter, but
mhm.
maybe just explain some of the different variations of experiences people will go through.
Yeah, and there really is a whole wide variety of experiences that will happen. So, I'll have a room of 30 people with me, for example, and there's going to be 30 different experiences happening simultaneously. It all depends on what the individual is coming in the room with, whatever's in their nervous system. Maybe something has happened to them that day. Maybe they have some unresolved trauma, or maybe they're just feeling really good and they just end up falling asleep. They might just fall asleep. Um, so many different things can happen in there. I've seen people have like involuntary movements with their nervous system resetting, and but I'll explain to you why all these things happen. So, on the physiological, scientific level, what's happening is these instruments that I play are emanating the full spectrum of the human hearing range, and the spectrum of the human hearing range is typically around somewhere 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz and beyond. So when I'm playing these instruments, the full spectrum is coming in and being heard and being perceived all at once, right? And when that happens, the thinking mind or the prefrontal cortex analytical mind, the part of your mind that's hearing me speak right now and interpreting my words and making sense of things, it's like your alert consciousness Um, it gets so confused by the all the vibrations and frequencies coming in all at once that it can't grasp onto everything that it's hearing, if that makes sense. So it's trying to grasp onto something, but it can't because it's just all happening all at once. And so that part of the brain gets confused and it just gives up thinking. And then you slow down the brain waves. The brain waves slow down. So you go from the beta brain wave, right? That's like this brain wave we're in right now. Like we're just like alert and awake. And it slows the brain waves down. And then you go to what's called the theta brainwave and then the delta brainwave. So you're oscillating somewhere between theta and delta, meaning uh, theta is another way of saying meditation, right? That's a scientific way of saying meditative uh, brain state. And then delta is sleeping. So you could easily fall asleep in a sound bath, like involuntarily. Even if you're not even that tired, you might actually just involuntarily fall asleep and start having these dream-like visions. But usually people end up somewhere in non-sleep deep rest, right? And when you're there, the body goes through several different self-healing processes. So when you're in non-sleep deep rest, the nervous system goes to the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. So your rest and digest state, and the body returns to homeostasis, and your body's just going to go through its own self-healing process, and the emotional body's going to restore, and the vagus nerve is going to be stimulated, and everything's going to reset, restore, and you're going to come out of this experience feeling amazing. People come out of it like, wow, I really needed that, because people are so much in the sympathetic nervous system state most of the day. And when they go through this experience, they come out just, oh, feeling like totally recovered and restored, right? Um, However, it's not always just like this pleasant, blissful spa like experience. Like some people can come in to the room and lie down and have a very challenging time. But maybe that challenge is necessary because it's something that needs to be cleared out of the nervous system, right? Or maybe it's a lesson in like they can't quiet their mind. Their mind is just so on and active all the time. They can't quiet that monkey mind. So maybe it's a prompt to maybe incorporate some form of meditation every day in your life so that you can quiet your mind and become more uh, creative in your actions and less reactive in your days. Like just people that are in their mind a lot, they're constantly reacting to the external world all the time. And that's exhausting, right? So, yeah, you're going to have a full spectrum of experiences happening all at the same time in a sound bath, depending on what people are coming in the room with. So, I hope that kind of explains like what happens internally during a sound bath.
Mm. Yeah, it definitely does. And I'd like to touch on the spiritual slash healing journey. We've talked about it before even entering this call or this recording. And I'd like to know what were the biggest takeaways that you experienced on your own journey? What were the biggest life learning lessons that you had gone through? And especially leading you to doing what you're doing now. It's a spiritual practice, but it's also a business. So there's like the practicality aspect, but there's also the spiritual aspect. Maybe touch a little bit on that.
Hmm. Yeah. So through my journey of seeking healing for myself, I realized, I can be a healer for other people, and I teach this in my program as well, like how to find your signature style or find your gifts as a sound healer, right? And what that is basically like going back through your history, like through your life resume, and finding out what you have in what I call your medicine bag. So, what has happened to you? What has, what do you have training in? What have you been on the receiving end of? All of these things can come out through you and channel through you as a healer, and be part of your style as a healer, right? So, for example, I have a lot of experience now with like shamanism through that apprenticeship and breath work. I've gone to these like Tony Robbins events. I've done men's work circles. I've done psychedelic therapy. I've been on the receiving end of hypnotherapy, um, self-regulating therapies, like all these things, yoga, um, even my yoga practice has a big influence on what I do in my sound baths. Because, for example, a sound bath is basically like the best part of yoga. It's just a big long shavasana. You're just lying down in shavasana position in corpse pose, receiving, right? And so I took my influences from my own yoga practice, um, and channeled it through into the sound bath in little subtle ways, right? Um, so my healing journey, uh, it like all of that I've been through and all I've done in terms of work on myself now channels through what I offer other people and what the experience that I bring to other people. It's like this eclectic collection of my own skills that I've acquired and things that I've experienced in the past.
And do you combine any psychedelics with the sound or any kind of breath work events? Do you partner with
Yeah,
people with that?
I
Mhm.
always do breath work in my
Mm,
events. Like that's always part of it because I learned from that feedback that I was talking about earlier, like the
mhm.
compiling the data when I started doing this, that there does need to be a transitionary activity before the sound bath even starts. So I find breath work is highly effective from my own experience. And so that's why I get everyone in the room to participate in various types of breathing techniques. It depends on what I'm feeling the room needs. Um, but usually it's like a few rounds of breathing techniques. Um, and then I'm also doing some brainwave entrainment um, by tapping on my hand drum as well. So it's like entraining the brainwaves with a rhythm while they're breathing. Um, yeah, so there does need to be a transitional sort of thing that deepens the relaxation before the soundscape begins. That's just from experience. So there's about a 15 to 20-minute period of me just like priming people's minds and bodies before I even start the sound bath.
And what's the largest event? You sent some photos over, and I was really surprised by one of the photos you sent. It looked like a full hall
Yes,
full of people. How many people would you say would be the maximum that you've?
that photo I sent you was probably a record for me in terms
Mm,
of how many people I've done at the same time. There's probably 150 people in the room
wow.
there. Yeah, that was part of Dr. Kevin Preston's New Human event up
Mm.
in Enderby, British Columbia this past summer. It was amazing. Yeah, so I was honored to be invited to share the stage with a lot of other people that were amazing that weekend.
Mhm. And then you've also done recently too that mental health. There was a mental health event at a school that brought you in privately to work with the teachers. That's amazing. So it sounds like you've covered a wide spectrum of types of events, private events. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Before I was just doing my own events, for the longest time. I was just doing my own events that I would post online for at different venues that I worked with, like yoga studios mainly. But recently, I think last year, it was just last year that I opened myself up to for hire to do like private wellness retreats, in-home gatherings where people just invite me to their home for like a birthday or this beautiful thing happened not too long ago where I was hired to do a private one for a woman who was like deep into having cancer, and it was like
Mm.
I'm just like this really like wow, that was so deep. And and then yeah, like the schools, the faculty or the principal of a school hired me to come to this high school recently and work with the staff and the faculty for World Mental Health Day, and that was really interesting. I've done like festivals, like music festivals and stuff like that. Not music festivals, but like what do you call those festivals? Like Bass
Wellness.
Coast and um, I don't know, like EDM festivals and stuff
Okay.
where
Mhm.
people are like dancing a lot and having a sound bath, like the morning after a big party is actually turns out to be much needed.
Interesting.
So yeah, I've done all kinds of things, and that's what's great about doing this is I get to go out there and I meet so many different people. I've made so many new friends and new connections, and have just like expanded my network. Like it's been incredible. Yeah,
And it's great to see that it's becoming very accepted. It's becoming is growing with acceptance and interest from many different. I mean, I was shocked when you mentioned the school because the principal hired you into a school to facilitate this private event for teachers, and that's incredible. So it's nice to see that it's becoming a bit more accepted and
yeah,
brought in.
yeah. It was weird for me to like go meet her there. I was sitting in the principal's office. It was bringing back all kinds of like memories of
Right.
school getting sent to the principal's office. Anyway, but yeah, that was the first time I'd been in a high school since high school, so that was funny. Um, yeah, so it's just been this incredible journey of meeting all kinds of people and having all these different experiences and yeah, it's been a very expansive uh, 5 years here doing this.
I believe it. That sounds incredible. And before we conclude here, I'd like to go into a conversation that you and I had regarding spiritual bypassing, just as far as the spiritual journey and this quest that we're on to find ourselves and to heal and to discover our full potential and release from our past difficulties and the shadow and the traumas and all the things that we don't want to face. We can tend to want to go to the other end of the spectrum and completely bypass reality or be bypass the hardships or hard aspects of ourselves, of our life, that we do need to address, or those difficult experiences that offer a lot of gifts and value in our life. So we did have a little bit of a conversation previously. What were your thoughts on that, and maybe offer some pearls of wisdom for the listeners here?
Right. Yes, this whole we talked about yeah, I guess it would be like toxic positivity. Is that a term?
Yeah.
Like people are too positive and they think that that's going to like um, manifest like the life of that they're like a lot of people are into this um, abundance manifestation, the secret, these kinds of things, which is great. Um, but I think like the stuff that you're avoiding is actually the gateway to like the life that you're going to um, want to actually create. So the stuff you're avoiding, the shadowy stuff,
Mhm.
um, once you address that, like the world will open up the way that you want it to. Until then, you're just stuffing things down, avoiding, and then you're recreating the same scenarios over and over again, and you don't know why because you're not doing that inner work that's necessary to have the breakthrough. And sometimes that's the stuff we avoid. This all the stuff we don't want to look at, like the corners of our mind, of our psyche. Um, Carl Jung would call it the shadow, right? That's where the gold is. You have to go in there. You have to deal with that stuff, and from there, your life is gonna improve exponentially. I'll give you an example. Okay, um, in 2017, alcohol was still a big part of my life. It was still just common. I was hanging around people that drinking was normal. It was just this normal thing. Um, and I didn't even realize like how severe of an impact it was having in my life, right? And then I went through this. Well, I went out one night and I had a um, a psilocybin um, um, ceremony booked like the following evening, right? I was going to do it, but the night before that, I was out drinking in a pub with friends, right? And so there was alcohol like in my bloodstream during this ceremony. You know what I mean? So it was almost like the mushroom medicine communicated with the alcohol in my system, and it took me on this like it sounds crazy, but it took me on this like life review journey. Almost, I was
Okay.
having visions of like my whole life since I started um, like having a relationship with alcohol from a very young age, like maybe too young. And I had this like life review experience about all the things that have ever happened to me that could be directly correlated back to alcohol,
Hmm.
right? And it was almost like some people would call it like a bad trip, but it was like a um, a deep dive into my shadow, into the deep corners of my mind that I'd been like sweeping under the rug for years, right? And something in that experience like rewired my or my neural pathways. And ever
Hmm.
since then, like I have not worked with alcohol or I have not touched alcohol, and it's out of my life. And my life is exponentially improved times who knows how much. Like it's just so much better without it. I make better decisions. My relationships are better. My finances are better. I'm clearer. My body's healthier. I'm in way better shape. Um, so anyway, this is one example of like doing the shadow work, and how it can actually improve your life instead of like doing the spiritual bypassing thing and everything's all positive and light and love all the time. You have to like go and address these issues that you're having internally before these um, quantum leaps can occur.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a similar story to mine. I remember I've done ayahuasca twice. I had two ceremonies in Canada actually. And the second time I had drank the night before the ceremony, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to give, I think, a day or two just for your body to be clean. So, not eating meat, not eating anything hard on the body, definitely not drinking. But I did because it was my friend's birthday. I was used to drinking, was just a reflex action of mine. Like it would just be a normal thing for me, very sociably accepted. Right. So, when you're in that social environment, it's just almost a reaction to that being in that environment. And I had a couple drinks before the night of the ceremony, and then the ceremony itself, I went into the pit of hell. I went down into really an incredibly dark experience, but I knew what was happening. I wasn't afraid at all. It was actually sort of similar to what you said. It was not exactly the same experience, but it really opened my eyes to a lot. I didn't stop drinking afterwards, but it definitely I gained a lot of information from that, and yeah, it taught me a lot, but it was really heavy, really, really heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's these. I every time I go into, I mean, I haven't had an experience such as that since. That's probably been the most darkest experience, but I've gone through my own self observation of my own darkness and those difficult times. And sometimes I have no choice. Even if I wanted to spiritually bypass and go right into something positive, I can't because I have to face that moment in my life in order to understand what is at the root of it so I can remove it or I can understand it or heal from it. Right. And then after those moments shift and move out, then there's a whole rebirth process that happens after that, right? And so it happens in many different forms, but it is so crucial to go through that, because then you go into a deeper self-discovery from that process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like the stuff we avoid is what's going to help us the most, you know.
Hmm.
And yeah, and sometimes you don't have a choice but to face it. Sometimes it's there, and
Hmm.
that's what you're in, and you have to face it. Um, and it's impossible to be positive all the time. And I think like um, it's kind of dangerous to like think that there's a hierarchy of emotions.
Hmm.
Like people always want to vibe high. I want to be a high vibe person or whatever. But that's not what being a human is. You know,
Exactly.
it's not like you can always consistently be in like love and gratitude and all that like high vibe, what people perceive as like high vibe emotional states, right? It's great to practice like a gratitude practice. I do that every morning. I'm like, what am I grateful for? I write out a little list, and that's great. You can definitely change your state, but yeah, I just think it can be dangerous to think that you should always only be in that positive emotions all the time. And maybe the negative emotions are trying to teach you something so that you can have a breakthrough and get to the next step of your evolution.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Mike, thank you so much for everything. This was wonderful. How can people find you? So I will leave information below for your Instagram. Any other shout outs that you want to give here would be great. And of course, the SoundQuest Academy is what you're running now for people who are wanting to learn how to be a sound healer.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at SoundQuest and SoundQuest Academy. That link is in the bio of SoundQuest. So it's two different Instagram profiles. You can also find me on Facebook, same thing, SoundQuest. You can find my page there. I'm going to be launching the new version of my program next year in probably late January 2024. And it's going to be helping sound healers all over the world uh, turn their passion for sound healing into a thriving business so that they can make good money doing this and help a lot of people at the same time. Because if you're not making a living doing this, then that means you're not a professional. It means that you're just a dabbler and you're not going to make a lot of impact. So I'm going to show you or show sound healers the roadmap, the blueprint on how to turn this into going from a hobbyist to a professional and helping a lot of people in the process.
Wonderful. All right, so I'll leave the links here for people to follow through. And again, thanks, Mike, for everything. It was really great.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.